Okay, we are recording.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Josh.
And this is Dean.
And here we are again with another installment of Finding an Agent. So I think we're going to start off this week. We're going to talk a little bit about what's developed in the last week, kind of old business type stuff. So I'll start. So for me, I spent the week working on mainly revising a couple of short stories in my effort to polish up my short story collection, get it ready to send out to either agents or more likely potential small presses that will accept unsolicited manuscripts. I did some research on looking for those small presses that are interested in accepting unsolicited manuscripts for short story collections. The small publishers that are looking for that are a little bit harder to find. Most publishers want novels. Novels tend to sell a little bit better. So I know there's a little bit of uphill sledding with this, but that's what I've been working on, and did polish up one of my short stories and send it out for submission to a small market in Europe yesterday. And of course, I haven't heard anything back from that. I just sent that submission out yesterday. But every potential publication that you get, even if it's a short story publication, those are more things that you can add to your resume to help sell yourself, to potentially land an agent when the time comes to query that agent with your novel. And so that was kind of what I worked on this week. Dean, how about you?
I added to my list of agents. I think I added about 5 agents. So I'm up to about 23 to 24 agents. I went through and ended up sending out about 5 query letters, I think. I had some challenges there, which I guess we can talk about a little bit later. So that was pretty much where I'm at. I received one rejection letter that was really quick from one, other than the one we discussed before. I don't know why. It was like I sent it out and was rejected within a day. And they had a pretty detailed, I will say I liked their submission system because it was an online submission system, and they had a very detailed series of questions that they wanted in terms of synopsis of the story. What is this, what other writings is this similar to? What kind of market will this appeal to, and things like that. So at least, I thought that they were getting good feel for what the novel was about and whether they thought it would be a good fit for them. And apparently they didn't.
So the rejection that they sent you, was it a form rejection, or was there any personal information in it?
No, it was a form email type rejection. It was just, sorry, but this doesn't fit with us kind of thing, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we haven't really touched on. And for people who have not queried agents, there's kind of a hierarchy in responses that you'll get, or can potentially get. And I went through this before when I was querying agents with Hellbender. For most of the agents, you're not going to get a response at all. Then you'll get a handful of agents that you query that'll send you a form response, like a form rejection. And that's a little bit more common. And then if you can get some type of a personalized rejection where they actually give you some commentary or feedback or some indication as to maybe why this was close but didn't quite work for them, then that's good. And then you can get a request for more information, maybe more pages or the full manuscript, things like that. And so there's several different types of responses that you can potentially get from the agent. And just getting any type of a response at all is kind of a good step in the right direction.
I had a question for you about your submission. You said to a small press in Europe.
Yeah, just a little indie publisher in Europe, in England.
Well, and the reason I bring it up is I've seen a couple of agents that were in Europe, like in England or Great Britain, and I've kind of shied away from them just because I assumed, I don't know, they wouldn't be interested in American authors. And that was what I was going to ask you. So it was like a British agent, I'm assuming.
Not an agent, just a British
or a publisher.
Small press. And one of the main reasons why I did it is because I think there's a good chance that they'll accept my story. The story is a reprint. It's one that's already been published, and they accept reprints, and not a lot of publishers will take reprints. And then the third aspect to it is that I figure any exposure is good exposure.
Yeah.
And so if it's a story, even though it's already been published, if I can get it published over in Britain and a few more people read it and like it and decide to order Hellbender or look into my work, then I figure that's a win for me.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to consider that myself.
Yeah. All right. So any other developments on what you'd sent out in the past?
No, like I said, I got one, new rejection, and that's pretty much all. I haven't heard anything at all from all the others.
All right. So what about this coming week? What have you got lined up?
I am going to try to find a few more agents. I'm still trying to go through this one book. After that, I guess I'm going to be done with trying to find agents for this, because I'm up to about, like I said, about 23, 24 now. And, I think that's a pretty good number of agents to send out to for a while. And I may look at, other aspects of what I need to do to try and promote my book, from there. I just haven't quite decided what that might be. I'm open to suggestions.
And right now you're querying strictly on the matriarchs. Is that right?
Yeah, just that one. That may be something to consider, which would be the switching over to the other novel that I wrote that's unpublished. There, I don't know. I don't have as good of a feel for that novel as I do for this one. I think that one it'll be harder to find a home for that one.
Gotcha. So this week, I think what I'm going to be working on is continuing to look for markets and agents that are interested in short story collections. I'm also working on another short story, a new short story. One of the things I'm a little concerned about is that my collection might not have quite enough bulk to sell on its own as a short story collection. When I do find small presses and agents that are looking at short story collections, a lot of times, they're talking stuff in the 100,000 word range, and my short story collection's not quite up to that level of bulk yet. So may work on another short story or two. And then I also am continuing to revise my Red Phantom novel as well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I need to work on is outlining for a novel of some sort. I haven't really put out any writing in a while.
So one of the other things we wanted to talk about this week is kind of how to keep yourself engaged or staying motivated while you're looking for an agent or while you're shopping your materials. Of course, one of the things that you can do is keep writing. As long as you're motivated and you got fresh ideas, you can always keep writing, and that kind of keeps you going. But when you're really down in the trenches trying to find an agent, it can get discouraging. It can get rather mundane. So staying motivated can be something of a task. Dean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. And I think part of the issue is, you want to be writing, and that's what you want to be focusing on. But the reality is that's only a part of becoming published. You actually have to get out there and make contacts and try to network with people and, find the agent. Or if you're going to go the self-publishing route, you got to get out there and promote yourself and do the self-publishing promotion that you need to do. And I find that staying motivated, and this isn't just writing, this is in any task that you're doing, can be difficult at times. And I've worked through some techniques that sometimes help me to get going when I'm not feeling that motivation that I thought we could go over a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so I'll give the example from last weekend when I was preparing agent queries. I view the query process, the query letter process, and contacting agents basically as a necessary evil. I don't view it as something that I enjoy doing. It's just simply a part of what you have to do, like I said, to become a writer. So, and then you add on top of that, the probabilities of actually getting an agent are so low that it can seem like you're casting pearls into the void basically, and never getting anything back. So there were some strategies that I've used in my work life that I found sometimes worked well or will work well in this task as well. when you have a bunch of things you need to do in order to accomplish something, I sometimes will start with some of the easier things. And then by doing that easy thing, it gives me the motivation that I need in order to then accomplish more difficult aspects of whatever it is that I'm doing. And the example in the agent search was I had a bunch of different agents and they all want different things. Some of them want very detailed and very specific things, like they want a 1 to 2 page synopsis and they want, this and they want that. Some of them just want query letters. So last week I was trying to get my 1 to 2 page synopsis ready. I had, a 5 to 6 page synopsis and I was trying to pare that down and it just felt very daunting. So I just stopped doing that and I looked at my list and saw that there were several agents that all they basically wanted was a query letter. So I just went ahead and sent out real quick query letters to those 2 or 3 agents. And then that gave me the motivation, the internal motivation, like that, internal dopamine hit you get when you accomplish a task, to then be able to go back and work on my query letter. And I looked at it again. I'm sorry, not my query letter, but my synopsis, and realized that I was at 3 pages on my synopsis in terms of paring it down to 1 to 2 pages. And I really didn't have that far to go. So I was able to get that pared down to 2 pages and then turn around and send out more queries with the 2 page synopsis to agents that were requiring that synopsis. And so I was able to get out, 5, 6 agent submissions last weekend as a result of just using that technique of doing simpler tasks first. And then in that case, that meant sending out queries to agents that only required the query letter, which I already had ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I guess you have to be careful in a situation like that. You don't want to get distracted with things. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm having a hard time getting going, when I'm trying to write or trying to whatever the task is, it's like, well, I really need to be doing this, but suddenly I realized I really need to go organize my closet,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to get sidetracked with things like that. But yeah, the small accomplishments can get the ball rolling, and writing, working, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, at least for me, there's almost like this feeling of inertia. And like
That's a good
once you
word
kind
for
of
it.
yeah, once you kind of get going, then you can kind of keep rolling in that direction, and you can kind of pick up steam and feed off of those small accomplishments and reaching some goals. And like you said, it's almost kind of an uplifting feeling that, yeah, I'm doing something good, I'm being productive, and I'm on the right track.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying, that'll work in every situation for every person, but if you're having trouble with it, you may try that.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, last thing we want to talk about is what we've been reading. And this week we're going to talk about what Dean's been reading. He's been reading something new. He's going to tell us all about it.
Okay, well, and I've actually gone back to book format. We'll see how I do with it. It is called Worlds uh, by an author named Joe Haldeman, and he is a science fiction author. I looked him up. I don't think I've actually read anything by him before, but he has a one novel that's fairly famous. I think it's called The Forever War, and it's basically about someone who's like fighting the centuries long war. I don't know the details. At any rate, this novel is about floating space colonies where in the future we have about 500,000 to 1 million people living in space now, and there's a lot of different types of societies, with a lot of different social structures based on the necessities of those environments and what's going on there. So the main character is a young woman who has put off uh, puberty until she's 17, which I thought was interesting, given some of the debates that we have now about those issues, um, by the use of drugs. And so she finally gets to be about 17 and has to actually go through puberty, and so she goes off the drugs or gets whatever injection is required to start the process of puberty, and she goes through puberty within a year or so. And then it's basically kind of the beginning, at least, is her relationships, and she starts getting into sex and everything like that, with different characters, and she's now going down to Earth, which is very rare. Only very rich people from these colonies have, get to go down to Earth to go to school or whatever. And she's going on some kind of scholarship or, something or another. The other interesting thing I thought about it is he writes a lot in narrative, and he really gets into, what science fiction authors call world building, where they kind of build up this whole world, and they're really into, what's going on in that society. And he developed this whole religion, and I think they're called neo-Baptists or something like that. And it's pretty different from what we would think of as Baptist, because it's like they have this whole like polyamorous, people can have sex with, pretty much anybody that they want to. And it's all part of their religion. And I just thought it was interesting. And this author, I think he's from Oklahoma. So I thought it was interesting that he kind of took the very, what can be a kind of very Calvinistic attitude, I guess, what we would think of as baptism, and flipped it around. And it's like a very hedonistic type religion with, all kinds of things going on. So he's pretty good at, building up these worlds. And this guy, we talked about that too. He's a Vietnam vet. So he's really got a lot of, creds for writing about wars and societies. And I think he was an aerospace engineer. He's still alive too. So anyways, it was a good novel, or it's a good novel.
How far into it are you?
I'm not that far, maybe 50 pages in. But like I said, he writes in a lot of narrative where there's no dialogue. And so and that's because he wants to really describe his societies. And the only way to do that quickly, I think, is to basically just have a lot of narrative. But, science fiction, I'm used to that. I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien would have, 100 pages of just straight narrative describing some elf, society or whatever. So, you get that a lot in science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. When was that book written?
It was written, okay, and I think this was written, that's the other thing. This was written in 1981. Some of the things he hits on, and I'm having trouble remembering what they were. He described some computer technology and the use of computer technologies. And I was like, wow, this guy really knew what was coming. Like some of his descriptions of the computer technologies involved and kind of in their day-to-day use. I mean, in 1981, I guess we had the Apple, computers coming out and the PCs, but, he really, I guess as an aerospace engineer, he really knew what was coming. And, he really saw it, with a lot of that stuff. And, he definitely, I'm sure is pleased with the likes of Elon Musk and whatnot, because they're, kind of bringing, the world that he was envisioning to fruition a little bit, I guess, with, private space exploration companies.
That's interesting. So have you read anything by him before?
No, I hadn't. And this is the other funny part of this is I bought this. I still have the receipt in here from, where is it? This is funny. From the Book Stop. I don't know if you remember the Book Stop. It was a chain. It was, and I think it's a little faded, but it's 1993. Yeah. I bought this in 1993 and I started reading it, and I remember now there's a good bit of sex in it and a good bit of like what we would consider very atypical or non-standard sexual practices, I guess. And I remember reading this when I was starting to read it when I would have been 17 or 18 then. And just, I was a little too prudish for it. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. And so I stopped reading it at the time. So it's interesting to see my own, change in attitudes since then.
Yeah, it's interesting too. When you were talking about some of the stuff going on with that girl, it kind of made me think a little bit about the first novel that you wrote, Intermediates, that kind of deals with some issues related to onset of puberty.
And like I said, the onset of puberty thing, because there's a whole debate, which, I won't express what my view on that is, but, I will a little bit. At any rate, there's a whole debate around, for children that think they're transsexual, letting them forestall puberty with drugs and the side effects associated with that. And I'm assuming in this, high-tech society with, super great drugs that they can make that happen without any damaging effects on people. But yeah, I kind of thought of that too whenever I was reading.
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten about that.
All right, good stuff. Well, all right, so I think that pretty much wraps us up for this week. And maybe next week we'll see if Dean's finished his book. He can tell us how it ends, and if not, tell us where it's going. But maybe next week we can try to hit on some other aspects of the agent search. One thing that I'd like to talk about is maybe writing the author biography. If you've submitted anything anywhere, whether it be to an agent or to a market for a short story, anything like that, you get asked about writing an author biography for yourself. And that's not always easy to do, especially when you're first getting started. So maybe we can provide some tips and some insight on doing that. All right. Well, Dean, do you have anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, have a good week. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Sorry, I got to start over.
I don't know why that's backwards. It's really weird.
Shit. All right.
We'll get better at this as we go, I guess. And
what's going into the sausage here?
There's definitely some reflection off my head. Yeah, I may end up in federal prison.